But I mean, my hero at that time was Etienne Louis Boulet, who's absolutely, like me, architect without responsibility. I think he made 1 or 2 buildings when he was a very young man, but his maturity is not represented by any buildings at all. You know, his buildings don't have front doors, they don't have windows. How do you use them? It's very, very arty, you know, profound, platonic, based on shapes sort of notions of architecture. Supremely, you know, amazingly, nirvana for architects. But again, architecture without responsibility. Well, first of all, I don't particularly want to be defined.
Well,
you know, there's so many possibilities, so many probabilities. And again, referring back, you know, I'm extraordinarily privileged. You know, I make operas, I make theatre, I make websites, I paint still, I have lots of painting exhibitions, I make films. But when I say I make films, I'm not really very interested in the sort of traditional, what I call the aquarium film, you know, where you put actors in a given space and you watch them up from a privileged position. I like the notions of, you know, interactive cinema, you know, the notion, again, of the age of the screen rather than the age of the limitation. So, you know, I think, you know, all sorts of stages of development, just beginning, just finishing, halfway through, almost finished. We must be involved in as many as maybe 30 or 40 projects all at the same time. And even that activity is exciting because it's like a juggling act. And often one project provides the inspiration or the ideas for another project. So I really enjoy being in that position. Yeah, no, you know, I mean, it's no idle thought to consider architecture as the mother of all the arts. You know, I cannot show a painting very often in the open air. Most of our other activities, you know, they need shelter, the whole concept of shelter. Shelter is different in the northern hemisphere as it is in Mediterranean countries. Shelter, you know, in Amsterdam where I live is rather different from in Mexico. But it's still, you know, a natural prerequisite. So in a sense, architecture houses, using that word in its widest possible sense, in a sense houses all the other art forms. And also, I think, you know, I enjoy its longevity. I think pottery and ceramics have been around much, much longer than architecture, and we have the evidence. But architecture is pretty profoundly, because of the building materials, you know, we have evidence of, you know, way back 13,000 BC. You can't say that about painting. You certainly can't say that about cinema. No, you know, I'm a practicing artist. I practice, you know, I'm not a theoretician. But obviously ideas about theory arise from practice. And it's a proving ground. You know, I might come up with a whole series of theories which are then totally disproved, or in some way abrogated, metamorphized in some way by the next series of projects we do. I mean, like, for example, I certainly have no faith in 3D, but it's very fashionable now. And I'm making a 3D film in Portugal. And I'm learning an awful lot about seeing and looking through doing that. You know, cinema, for example, is full of numbers, 16 mil, 35 mil, Godard's notion of cinema as the truth, 24 frames a second, etc., etc. And I've learned a new figure at 7.5 centimeters, which is the distance from that pupil to that pupil. So that's the basis of 3D. We have to see individually what that eye sees and what that eye sees, and then we have to put them together at the ratio of 7.5 centimeters to be able to create the notion of binocular vision. So if you're a child, and I'm sure your bifocal vision is probably only about 3.5 centimeters. Maybe if you're, you know, an old athletic person who needs 5 pairs of glasses to see the world, there's some other change. But it's interesting, isn't it, that after 100 meters, we don't see things in 3D anymore. Because what the left eye sees is exactly what the right eye sees. There's no need. So when you go and look at a magnificent panorama, you're not seeing it in 3D. You're back to 2D again. And all these sorts of ideas, which are very much related to retinal theory, very interesting to take back again into other forms of seeing and looking. Well, last week I was in Zurich at Architectural College giving an architectural lecture. Next Sunday I'm in Rome giving another architectural. And I think, what the hell? You know, I'm not an architect. Why am I asked? And in some cases I say, no, look, you know, let me talk about cinema. I don't want to talk about architecture anymore. Of course it fascinates me. But, you know, I suppose the cinema that I proselytize is not easy. You know, I don't make Hollywood cinema. And it often needs footnotes, and it needs pushing and organizing and explaining and talking about. And you can see I enjoy talking to you. So I often seize these opportunities to I don't know, to talk about these ideas, to be able to explain them. And hopefully maybe to get something back. I asked when I came here, is there a Q&A afterwards? And very disappointingly, they said no. Because I often, you know, the retort or the feedback can be very exciting and